Hello everyone, welcome to Series 3 of the GBA Lightbulb Sessions. The Great British Entrepreneur Awards, in association with BT Skills for Tomorrow, have designed a free live stream series of Lightbulb Sessions to support small businesses and entrepreneurs with insightful and advice-driven sessions, featuring some of the UK's brilliant entrepreneurial minds to illuminate your path to entrepreneurial success. You can find out more about BT Skills for Tomorrow by heading to their website at www.bt.com/skills for tomorrow or by clicking on the link in the comments section. In today's session, Great British Entrepreneur Awards Head of Content Jonathan Davis will be speaking with founder of Snaffle & Pig, Nick Coleman. Stockton Sainsbury's, Tesco, John Lewis, Ocado and Selfridges, Nick will explain his expertise on breaking into the big retailers, pitching to supermarkets, and how you can bring innovation to the shelves with your products. Winning retail is only half the battle, and keeping it is the real work. So Nick will offer top tips and advice on the benefits of winning retail listings, how to keep them, scaling up for retail, and how these can impact your business. There is an opportunity to ask questions during this session. If you have a question you'd like to ask, you can pop this in the Q&A function at the bottom of your screen, and we'll do our best to answer these towards the end of the session. Please note there will be a poll at the end of the session and all answers will be anonymous. And with that, I'll pass over to our host today, Jonathan Davis.
Yeah, thank you, Chloe, and Nick, welcome, and thank you for taking the time to speak with us today. I guess for anyone who isn't familiar with you and the business and the story, I guess it'd be a good place to start by hearing a bit more about you and Snaffle & Pig.
Thank you very much for the invite. So my name is Nick Coleman. I'm the founder and CEO of the Snaffle & Pig company. Snaffle & Pig is a food brand. We used to call ourselves a porky snack brand, but we've kind of started to diversify a little bit more than just pork snacks. And it all started out of a love of pork crackling. I and my business partner, Udi, we started a medical company about 12 years ago selling medical supplies to GP surgeries and care homes. And we started that business because we wanted to make money. And for any entrepreneur out there, owning a business is not the short cut to wealth. It's more stressful, you have less money, you have no time for anything outside of work. And it kind of felt like we were sacrificing so many things for a business that we weren't that emotionally connected to. And we went away and we thought of food brands that we wanted to create and something that we would be more proud of. And believe it or not, I absolutely love pork scratchings. It's one of those emotive snacks that you conjures up all these lovely nostalgic feelings. And predominantly they're eaten in the pub. Pubs are places where communities come together. And I just thought there would be an amazing opportunity to bring that to the 21st century. So we set out about 6 years ago with £500 to launch like the world's best pork scratching company. And I guess here we are, kind of 6 years on. We are ticking that box slightly. We've got so much more to do, but we're incredibly proud of the brand that we have built. And Snaffle & Pig is sold in many a retailer. We have about 300 different SKUs. You can buy our pork crackling, our pork scratchings. You can get them in packets, in advent calendars, in Easter eggs. You can now get our chorizo. You can get beer, cider, applesauce, hot sauce. We do merchandise. We do a big barbecue. And very shortly, we're launching a range of sausage rolls as well. So lots going on, but still got that fire in my belly that I had 6 years ago when I wanted to create something that I was truly passionate about.
That's excellent to hear, and like you said, certainly a lot going on. So in her introduction, Chloe mentioned the retailers that you stocked in. Which did you get into first, and kind of take us back to the first time that you went into a store and saw your own product on the shelf? How did that feel?
When you see your product on the shelf, it is unbelievable. And even today, we're still only 6 years old. I still have that buzz that I had when I first saw it, and I'm hopeful that for the next 20 years I'll still have that feeling. I think the moment you don't get that feeling, you need to get out of the business, because it's so exciting to see a brand nationwide. I think if we go right back to the very beginning, I'm no means an expert on this, and I'm not here to preach. I'm just here to tell people how we did it. It might not necessarily be right for everybody, but it was the right way for us and how we wanted to build our brand. So what we did is we started with minimal viable product. We spent very little money building the brand. Instead, we focused all our efforts on a product that would taste great, would be different from everybody else, have that unique selling point. Think of all the reasons why a buyer would say no, and we tried to develop a product that would kind of answer all those questions and turn that no into a yes. And then what we did is we started really small. We didn't approach Tesco, who happened to be the first major grocer on our books. We didn't approach them till about year 3. And at that point, we'd already had a case study, so 3 years of success selling the brand into other retailers. What we did is we went pub to pub and we started really small, and we spoke to decision makers, and we got the product into those pubs. And once those pubs started reordering, we then started to think a little bit bigger. So instead of thinking of people who only had one pub where it was really easy to get into, how could we get into pubs that had owners that had more than one pub? And then once we got into those, we then started to focus on shops. So we'd sell into single-owned, single-site shops. And then we started selling to multi-sites. And the kind of, I guess, the first proper retailer, the brand name that everyone would recognize would be Selfridges. That was the brand that we managed to win within the first 18 months. And they are such a fantastic company to work with. They really support young brands, especially British brands. They love putting onto their shelves something completely different. And by giving them something that they'd never seen before, and kind of thinking of all the reasons why the buyer would say no, and having a product that was different, having a product that was exciting, a product that had a proven track record. Once we've got all of that, that's when we then went to the likes of Tesco. Because if you're not geared up for Tesco, then even if you win it, it's going to be incredibly difficult to keep it. And the last thing you want as a small brand is to win 2,000 stores, because that's potentially 2,000 cases is the first order. But it's normally 2 cases of stores. It could be 4,000 cases. That's a lot of production. So we'd much rather win the really small guy to begin with, and that kind of that crowd effect, chipping away and building the business slowly and organically would then lead to kind of the more larger stores that would, I guess, make us more famous.
Yeah, and in that journey, obviously you mentioned it was quite a gradual journey in terms of the businesses that you were targeting. How did you balance the approach in that, the kind of culture that you're approaching with small individual independent pubs, multi-site pubs, and then, to Selfridges, which is, this worldwide known, more luxury kind of store, and then into, the biggest supermarket in the country? How do you kind of balance the appeal?
Such a great question, because at the very beginning, you think you can sell anything to anyone. And as an entrepreneur, I think it's really important that you are the face of your brand, that you are out there selling it. And it works really well in the beginning, because people like Selfridges will want to see, touch, feel the founder. They'll want to understand the emotion behind the brand. They'll see 10 a penny national account managers, but to actually meet the founder and understand why this food brand or drink brand or whatever came about, to understand the history of it, the provenance of it, it will be far more easy for them to turn that no into a yes. And so at the beginning, my business partner and I, we used our kind of, our face and got out there as often as we could. We then didn't realize that you actually do have to change your sales technique when you're talking to the larger corporates like Tesco, because again, it'll be, it's probably rare for them to be food founders, but they do get bombarded with product innovation all the time. And the buyers there have a very kind of, I guess, specific role. And the larger the company becomes, the kind of more niche that role becomes, and you really have to start talking their language. And the grocery, they're great for using acronyms and for things that you wouldn't have a clue about, and especially as when you're starting out. So my kind of big advice for all of this is, at the very beginning, don't employ anyone to do the sales other than yourself. You are the best brand ambassador possible. Even if you lack confidence in sales, please don't delegate that to anybody, because it's so important that you get out there and meet people. But as you get bigger, feel free to pull on the resources of people around you that will have expert knowledge of how the supermarkets especially will be running. And that may be buying in some consultancy support. There's a lot of people out there who have been there and done it, and inviting them to some of the key meetings with you, but helping you understand joint business plans and those kind of things that grocers will be asking for. It's working with a supermarket is incredibly risky, and it's really important that you have someone with some experience to support and guide you. We've been incredibly lucky. When we worked with supermarkets in the very beginning, we did it all ourselves, and that was just pure luck that we managed to stay listed. And as we've grown, realized where our weaknesses are, and we've surrounded ourselves with some fantastic industry experts to support that growth. And they cost a lot of money, but they pay for themselves within about a year. And by that point, you've got a much stronger retailer business.
Yeah, so it sounds as though, certainly in your experience, that being a younger business, being a smaller business, certainly helped you in securing those listings.
It does. It opens the door, but you're not. The buyers are not idiots. You're not dealing with uneducated people. They know that the consumer is not always just going to pick up your product just because it's shiny and new. It's easy to sell one product to one customer. It's very difficult to get that same customer to come back and repurchase, and that's where the magic is. So buyers shelf space is incredibly tight. It's only getting tighter. There's legislation happening around the corner regarding high fat, sugar, salt, which is going to impact especially my area quite considerably. So it's all things to be aware of politically and economically, and everything that brands need to be considerate of, that buyers are under pressure for. And just think, if you're approaching a supermarket, or anyone really, they are going to have to remove an existing line to replace it with yours. And you need to understand, well, what product are they going to replace? Try not to be blinkered in that you think your product is phenomenal, that you've got a more engaging, fun brand, that you've got more followers on social, that you're new, that you use a slightly different recipe, that you've removed certain types of ingredients. Kind of don't be baffled, don't be blinded by that. Instead, think very logically and remove the emotion. What would the buyer take out? What would they put in replace of that? And would that consumer not only purchase it once, but would they continue to repurchase it? And I mentioned it in the intro, it is easy to win a retailer in the grand scheme of things. It's still incredibly difficult, but it is easier to win the retailer. It is far more difficult to keep that business and then grow from that base, because as soon as you're in, there's going to be another newer, more exciting food brand that is just desperate to kick you out and replace your brand with theirs.
Yeah, absolutely. And something that you mentioned a few minutes ago was speaking the language of the buyers. Obviously, you mentioned in your intro that your previous business was in medical supplies, obviously a completely different industry. How difficult was it for you to go into something that you effectively knew very, very little about, and to start speaking that language and secure the listings that way?
It is really difficult. I mean, in fact, I was a buyer at M&S. I didn't buy food, I bought clothing. And that language is very different to the food language. I think, how we did it, I'm not saying it's the right way, but we embraced our naivety. We were very open about the fact that we were the new kids on the block. We were competing in an industry that had a very dominant brand. The market leader has 65-70% market share, and they've been around for 40 years. They're loved by the UK population who consume pork snacks. They have built up a very loyal customer base. And we know that they are also a white label manufacturer. So the likelihood is that they are also making other products that are probably Tesco, Sainsbury's, Asda's own brand, that appears to be own brand. And so we know there were some kind of much deeper relationships in there, that we weren't just going to be able to come in and say, we knew we're more exciting, we flavour, we use more higher welfare product, and they were just going to kick them out. It was never going to happen. So, but we played up to that, and we asked questions, and our buyer was they want to support you. The buyers are, depending on who you get, but generally they love to bring something exciting into their category, because it's an opportunity for them to take a risk, but also for them to grow their category. Buyers are not going to grow categories if it stays stagnant. They have to innovate. And if you can give them something that you're not going to give to any other retailer, that's another reason why they potentially would say yes. So we played on that naivety. We offered them a range that wasn't available elsewhere, and we gave them passion, which the big corporates just won't give. You know, we said we would be out there fighting for every sale. We would do as much activity as low cost as possible. You know, we wouldn't put a big display at the front of a store, but we would get out there and we would sample, and we would be human, really. We'd sell our story to the consumer and get them to buy into it as much as we could. But it's really important that, and particularly for Snaffling Pig, we have the retailer is one channel. You know, we have also the online direct channel. We also have our pub channel, and then we have our in-store gifting channel as well. And for us, it's really important that each channel kind of builds up the brand separately, but they all support each other. But no one channel sells something that the other channel is also selling. And that kind of helps build the brand, helps kind of increase the number of potential consumers we have access to. And then when we launch a new product in a new channel, we can kind of try and mobilize the customers from the other channels into this new one. But if I had a formula for success, now I'd be as big as Cadbury. It's not. There's no one fix that works for every single brand. I think it's a combination for us, particularly, of trying lots of small things, lots of tweaks, and that kind of continual improvement and that compound effect, that every single step forward is just going to take you closer and closer to brand dominance, really.
Yeah, and you mentioned there that you've got different products that only sit within the specific channels. I'd be interested to hear, have you ever had an experience where a retailer says, look, we want that product that you're only selling on your website, for instance, and how do you kind of balance your desire to keep it in that channel and keep the business how you want it versus potentially, risking that relationship going forward?
Yeah, I'm not a great example of this, because I'll just bend over. Like if a retailer wants something and they're as large as the national retailers are, you can't say no. Like, as much as your principles are, I really want to keep that low and slow barbecue crackling in pubs. If the retailer wants it, you've kind of got to rethink, well, how can I as a brand not be negatively affected by this? What can I do for the pubs now that the retailer won't have to begin with? And I think for us, what it is about is it's using the other channels as a launch vehicle. And once they build momentum and the case study is proven, and you then take that into the retailer, but you better have another product that is available to hospitality or the online sector that is not available in retailers. So a good example for us is we launched a pork crackling advent calendar 4 or 5 years ago, just at the point when chocolate advent calendars were being not replaced, but people were introducing non-chocolate advent calendars. So we made 10,000 in that first year and sold out, I think, by end of October. And the next year, Sainsbury's wanted one. And so what we decided to do was we weren't going to turn that away. So we made them a salted version and we priced it lower. And then for everyone else, we made a mixed flavour and we made the packets bigger and made the overall advent calendar bigger. So Sainsbury's then didn't rebuy that product the next year, which was kind of expected. We thought it was just going to be a one-hit wonder for them. They went on to other things. But what that made us do is, because we had to innovate, we then had a new product range out there. And now we're kind of in a position where that's doing really well in the other channels. So now we need to make sure if a retailer wants another salted version, then we've got that in our arsenal. M&S, when I worked for them, they always taught me good, better, best. You always got to have a product with 3 different kind of classifications. You have a good product, you have a better one, and a best one, and that's how you can spread that product throughout the different channels without competing. Worst thing you possibly want to do is the same product in Aldi and the same product in Tesco and the same product in Selfridges. Someone is going to be deeply disappointed by that, and you'll end up just killing your brand. It'll just become a commodity, and that's no place for a brand to be.
Yeah, I think that's really great advice. And you mentioned there about using the other channels as a launch pad to the retailers. How easy is it to identify when and if, I guess, your business is ready for retail? Is there a risk of taking on retail listings too early?
Again, I'm probably a terrible person for answering this, because I am very much, I like getting things out there before they're really ready. And I like getting instant feedback, learning as I go, making mistakes. I like being on fire and trying to put the fire out. I think, they say an entrepreneur is someone who'll jump off a cliff and then try and build the plane as they're falling. And that is Snaffling Pig's mantra. So we're never really ready whenever we do anything, but the stakes are getting quite high now. So we've recently launched the chorizo in every single Tesco store and most of the Sainsbury's stores and most of the Morrison stores, and it's quite scary, because those orders come flooding in. They're huge orders, and you have to make sure your supply chain set up. It takes us 7 weeks to make a chorizo. It has a 4-month shelf life. So the supermarket will never commit to taking that kind of volume. They'll place an initial order, but you'll never know what the initial order is really until they actually place it. You've then got to deliver it relatively quickly. So within a week, if you're lucky. And then if it starts to do well, you've got to make sure you've got backup supply. And so we've had to take some very calculated risks, and we've had to, in this instance, we decided we would much rather have more stock available than less, and we had to make a big commitment to the supermarkets, to our manufacturers, and it's scary, but we're lucky because we've got 6 years of I guess organizational history. We run our cash flow very well. We've got a very tight operational structure. We've got the people on the feet on the street to go into store and make sure it's merchandised correctly. So even now, 6 years into that, it's still very risky. In the very beginning, if we'd got that order, we would have absolutely said yes. We would have absolutely got it wrong. We would have over-ordered stock. We would then flooded the market with cheap, out-of-date stock, and the brand wouldn't have existed. So as much as those big orders are incredibly exciting, just make sure that you think of all the reasons why you shouldn't do it. And if, I don't think it would hurt you, I say that, but if the buyer says they want to list you in 1,000 stores and you've just started out, I don't think it would actually hurt you in the long run to say, just list us in 100. Let's just get it going. Because if they list you in 1,000 stores and it doesn't sell, you've got no hope. You're out. You're being kicked out. If it doesn't sell in 100 stores, then at least you can go into 100 stores. Even with one person, you could hit 10 stores a day. That would take you 10 days. You could go into those 10 stores. You could find out why they're not selling. Chances are it's not being merchandised in the right place. Chances are it hasn't got the right price label on the label. Chances are the staff haven't tried it yet. So, go and take a load of samples to the checkout team. Make sure that the customer service team has got some. Stand outside and hand out samples to people and customers. Give them money off vouchers. Talk to consumers and tell them your story. Rate of sale in supermarkets. It's not. Some categories it's huge, like bread, milk, but generally you kind of got to sell 5 to 10 products a week. That's not a huge amount of products. So it's much better to have less stores and do them really, really well and build a case study And then that buyer will then want to take you up to 300 stores, and then 500, and then 1,000. Once you get to like 1,000 stores, you're going to have a big team around you who's got to get out there and see it. So yeah, be a little bit pessimistic when you're launching with retailers, but then I don't take my own advice, because if a buyer gave me 1,000 stores, yeah, I can do it. So yeah, I'm not always the greatest one for.
I think that's really interesting advice, and I think probably something that that a lot of people wouldn't expect to hear. Like you said, whether or not you take your own advice is another matter. But you mentioned there about your ability to fulfill orders. Have you got any advice on scaling the manufacturing, the delivery, the whole process?
It's the entrepreneur's paradox, really. You need to find a supplier who's small enough that will want to work with you. But when you're very first starting out, those small guys, that flexibility that you desperately need from a manufacturer is not the flexibility you want as you get bigger. You want your manufacturers in the end to be very rigid. You want them to have very strict production schedules. You want to know that they are bringing in containers of packaging and raw materials, and they've got huge amounts of backup supplies, so that if a Suez Canal crisis happens again, they're not going to be out of stock. So I think it's really important that you find a manufacturer in the beginning who ticks flexibility, collaborative approach, great price point that enables you to enter the market, and just supports you in that very beginning. But unfortunately, as you grow, you'll have to kick them to touch. You'll have to find a slightly kind of guess more process-driven, more boring manufacturer, I guess. And then at some point, maybe you bring it in-house if you think that you're at that stage. But there's just keep evolving your supply chain. I mean, we, as much as we focus on our consumers. Absolutely, but we focus so much on our supply base as well, because it's they're the ones who make us look good. We would never want to sell anything that we wouldn't be that we wouldn't eat ourselves. We would be proud to give our grandparents that so we make sure that is so rigorous, and the standards are so high. That when we sell to consumers, we're incredibly proud of it. We wouldn't want to make it ourselves, because we know that we're not that way inclined. We're marketeers. We're fluffy. We want to go out there and sell the product. We don't want to be doing SALSA accreditation and BRC. That's all very boring. So we leave that to the experts to do that on our behalf.
No, that's excellent. We had so last week's Lightbulb session was with Tej Lalvani, the CEO of Vitibiotics, and he was talking about the art of negotiation. How important was it for you to have those skills in the listings that you've secured?
Yeah, I mean, negotiation is absolutely key. We're actually on Dragon's Den as well. We seem to negotiate a fairly good deal with Nick Jenkins, but negotiation. I mean, it's really important. You know exactly when to walk away, and Snaffling Pig, we know that. Like if a retailer is not willing to support us in the way that we would want to be supported, then there is no point just bending over them, because it will just, your brand will die. Like, people buy your brand for a reason. It's your principles, it's your values, it's everything you're aspiring to be. And Snaffling Pig, we're unashamedly proud of who we are. We're not everyone's cup of tea. We are fiercely proud of being an indulgent snack, and we want to be sold at a certain price point, because we believe we're value for money at that price point, and we want to make sure our suppliers and the whole kind of food chain has a fair price. And so we're not trying to win every single customer. We turn away lots of customers. I won't name who they are, but there are retailers out there who are just completely and utterly price led, and that's not the game that we want to be in. As much as we want everyone to know our name, we don't need to build a brand like that, and that won't be a brand that will stay around forever. As I mentioned earlier, it's commodity driven. That's not who we are. So knowing when to say no is really important. Knowing when, you know, it's a win-win, where you kind of walked away a little bit bruised from a negotiation, but actually you've got the long-term support and security of the business. You know, that's really important. We've done a lot of deals where it hasn't worked out commercially for us, but it's worked out for the good of the brand. And you know, we work with some retailers where I reckon even if they asked for it for free, we'd probably still give it to them, because they're such lighthouse accounts for us. They're so visible. They're so great with all their support. They, you know, put us at the front of the store. They talk about us on social media. They have the right customer base for us. That customer base happens to be incredibly well connected and has a great influence in market. And so, you know, actually there's something, we do that. But we wouldn't do it for everybody. And it's just really important that those retailers understand who you are. And otherwise they might as well just sell your competitor, because it's not going to grow your brand in a way that we'd want to do it.
Yeah, and in terms of timing, I guess that this might not apply necessarily to your industry, because you said there's kind of you and a major competitor, but a lot of entrepreneurs talk about timing in terms of getting retail listings. Do you see it as something where you know, let's say a supermarket is on a big drive for you know, vegan brands, for instance, that's obviously become very popular in the past couple of years. In terms of getting the timing right, do you think it's better, if you are a vegan brand, for instance, to try and wait for a drive like that, where you might risk being up against a lot of other businesses pitching for those listings, or to try and get in there you know, at any other time and be like, look, we're the ones that are different. We're different to what is being pitched for your spaces.
The timing is key. I mean, retailers will generally have 2 buying cycles, around March and around September. But the thing about Snaffling Pig is when the world zigs, we zag. We launched a meat product at a time just before the vegan trend has kind of really started to gather momentum. But we're not going to change our attitude. I don't think the vegan trend is a bad thing. Like, I'm not sitting here going everyone should eat meat. I generally agree that meat consumption it's gone a bit mental, and there is a lot of low value, low quality, poor welfare meat out there, and I don't like the idea of consuming it, so I wouldn't consume that. But what I do believe is that consumers should have a high quality option, and if those who want to reduce their meat intake, great, but when you do eat meat, there is a place for Snaffling Pig. And by kind of, for us, I don't want to give my magic away too much, we're competing in a market that no one is talking about, but it's still a very considerable market. And if I wouldn't particularly want to go and launch a vegan brand right now, because I guarantee that market is absolutely saturated. And if you're trying to launch a vegan brand right now, you're probably a bit too late to the market. So think about the next trend that no one's actually talking about yet. Second mouse gets the cheese. Big believer in that. You've had, is it Linda McCartney? She had a vegetarian brand out for years and years and years. I have no idea how big it is, but no one ever talks about it. They're all talking about Oatly, and they're talking about other that great meat brand as well. Those guys are doing incredibly well. They're the ones who are really growing, because they let someone else knock down the door. They've waited, or not necessarily on purpose, but the timing's been right, and they've then launched their brand. So, but yeah, I mean, coming back to Snaffling Pig, I would much rather be in a market that is under the radar, that is still of considerable size, and we have an opportunity to do the right thing, whilst all this noise that is happening. Veganism has a huge share of voice, but the meat industry is still worth. I mean, pork alone is 2.7 billion. I don't need. I'd love to have 60% of that, but I don't need 60% of that. I just need a couple of percent. That will do me nicely. But we're going to do it in the right way, because I totally and utterly agree. High welfare, good standards. There is a place for meat in our society, but it doesn't have to be Monday to Sunday. It can be selective. So yeah.
I think you might you might end up having a few more competitors after this, praising the size of the
No way.
praise the size of the market, but obviously going under the radar, like you said. You've talked a little bit about the different channels that you have, and obviously the past year. We've seen so many food and drink brands either pivot or expand or shift focus to their direct-to-consumer channel. Moving forward, as we start to come out of restrictions, come out of the pandemic, do you think that we'll see fewer startups targeting or prioritizing retail listings, and in turn, I guess, will that make it easier for the ones that do still want to prioritize that?
Yeah, interesting. I mean, deep down, I'm a bit of a cynic. I think the world's just going to go back to normal, and we'll all work from home for a bit, but we're all getting slightly frustrated with virtual. We're social animals. Humans need other people. That's why we live in towns and cities. So we're naturally going to gravitate to where other people are. I think that if you're a food or drink brand and you're not selling direct to consumer, you're missing a huge opportunity. Snaffling Pig, before lockdown, we had about 25% of our sales came from direct to consumer. We built a very successful and supportive website that sold predominantly gifts, and predominantly those were sold around Father's Day and Christmas. Since going through lockdown, our sales online were at about 60% of our turnover. We did lose our pub channel, and fortunately that's starting to come back, but our grocers didn't go away either. We maintained the grocery channel. So overall as a business, we grew through the pandemic. As we're coming out of it though, we're investing even more money into direct to consumer. But the strategy that we have is similar to what I mentioned earlier about not selling the same thing in all channels. There's lots of people out there who are selling, say they're a drinks brand and they sell a certain type of drink. They just expect that if they have an e-commerce site that they can sell that drink direct to consumer. Why would someone want the inconvenience to go and buy that drink from that website, enter all their card details in to get exactly the same product they could get if they just went down to the local supermarket? So what Snaffling Pig tries to do is we try to focus more on the gifting side, do something that is a bit more with solving a problem, a gift solution, and making it a bit more convenient for people to buy a very innovative, unusual gift that you wouldn't be able to get anywhere on the high street. And that kind of strategy for us has been really successful, but we can't just stop. Like we launched, we were only 6 years old. We started with one flavored pork crackling. It was a chili pork scratching. We now do, it's in the region of 1,700 different SKUs of different variations, different hampers, different types of food and drink. And we keep pushing the boundaries. This Christmas we even launched coffee. We launched a coffee last week, very under the radar. You probably think, why the hell has Snaffling Pig done coffee? Well, it's because Snaffling Pig is not a pork snack brand. It's a brand that creates conversation, and it's a brand that encourages social gathering. Not the kind of brand that you want to be shouting about when you're not allowed to socially gather. But so under the radar, we're working on all this in the background. But coffee is one of those times of the day where you will have a chat and have a coffee. And Snaffling Pig will never be a global brand if it can't take part in breakfast. We need to take part in breakfast, lunch, and dinner. We need to be Monday to Sunday. We need to be able to be consumed on the train, in a cinema, when you're at home alone, when you're out at a party. And so Snaffling Pig wants to bring out loads of different products that help kind of increase the number of occasions that you would consume our brand. And that's not trying to be all things to all people, because all of them will share one thing in common. But it's about thinking about the brand differently than just being a drinks brand that just wants to sell a flavored drink to people, and they think by having a website it's going to work, because it won't.
And just quickly before we go to the attendee questions, do you think that idea that Snaffling Pig isn't a pork scratching brand, it is a brand that creates conversations? Do you think that has kind of been key in securing your listings, so that if any more competitors do come along the line and say, hey, we're a new pork scratching brand, you're saying, okay, that's not us. We're not a pork scratching brand. We're something different.
That's right. I mean, you just have to type pork scratchings into Google to see the number of competitors, copycats that we've got, and it's incredibly flattering. As an entrepreneur, ask yourself one question: what business am I in? It will take you days to answer that question. And once you understand what business you are in, then free rein, go for it. Run 100 miles an hour and develop your brand that fits around that question. We are not in the pork snack game. We're not in selling meat. We are not about selling gifts. We are in about creating an environment for people to have conversation, and food and drink encourage those conversations. And Snaffling Pig needs to be at the forefront of that.
Excellent. Well, like I said, we're running short on time, so I will go through a couple of the audience questions. We've got quite a few, so I doubt we'll be able to get through all of them. So Florian asks how you got your first meeting with I guess Selfridges, I guess. So how did you actually get that appointment, get the meeting?
We were so lucky because we actually never met the Selfridges buyer. We bombarded them with samples. We targeted them on social media by just, when I say that, it sounds really bad. We went on LinkedIn, we looked up Selfridges buyers, we tried to send them messages, we sent them nice handwritten cards with the product in, we sent hampers that included some other products, we took some photos of the products, and we just sent them just lots of samples really to get them to try. We know that our product tasted great, and we knew that if we could just get someone to taste it, they'll see it was different. And we were very fortunate that Selfridges somehow, just timing was perfect. Who knows? They must have walked in and we were the only parcel on their desk that day, but somehow they managed to see the parcel and they managed to eat it and emailed us back and asked for pricing. And we hand delivered our first order. And ever since then, we are desperately trying to keep them happy by giving them new products that they've never seen before. They're such they're not only an amazingly recognizable brand, they're such a lovely company to deal with. And we'll do what we can to keep them happy.
Brilliant. A question from Daniel, who asks, what has been the best marketing initiative that you've used to get your products flying off the shelf? And I guess an extension of that to keep your listings, which obviously you said is the more difficult aspect.
Yeah, so I'm a huge believer in marketing at point of purchase. You know, you can do all really wacky, lovely, creative things. You know, loads of lovely brand activations. You can make loads of nice videos. For us, the single most important, it's incredibly boring, but it's making sure your product is out. So we have a company called Red Wigwam, and they have thousands of people across the country, and we pay for them every week to go into store and make sure that if there are any cases out the back in the warehouse, that they're bought out and put onto shelf. And we make sure that the shelf looks fantastic. The packaging is great anyway. The product tastes great. So we know from research and from 6 years of experience that if you try our product, then you're 60% likely to reorder or buy it again. And 60% for us is great. That's not, I don't know what the overall average is, but we are aware that in the food industry, it's kind of about 30 to 40%. So we're really pleased with that 60%. And it's just about getting that visible and just making sure it is absolutely everywhere. So it's boring, but get it out. The other thing you can do is you can do couponing. It's a lot more expensive. There are apps out there as well where you can give your customers 50% off, even try for free, because that's really important. If your consumers never tried it, why would they want to pick it up? So there's lots of things at your arsenal that you can do. But single most important thing is make sure it is out, because as much as supermarkets say that they'll get it out, they won't. The stores are far too busy. There's not enough staff. I used to work in store myself. These guys, they're worried about the big brands, Cadbury's, Pepsi, Coke. They're not worried about you guys. So you've got to look after yourself.
Excellent. And the name of that business was Red Wigwam, was it?
Red Wigwam, yeah.
Excellent. Just someone asked to clarify that. Thank you. I guess we've probably got time for one more. So this one comes from Goku, I hope I pronounced that correctly, who asks, what's the greatest mistake you've made in your business journey? And I'll just to tweak it slightly to the topic in securing a listing?
Greatest mistake. So, yeah, at the very beginning, we were fortunate, not very beginning, but we were fortunate in winning Sainsbury's, and we didn't realize that maintaining Sainsbury's was the most difficult thing. So we launched, and our rate of sale wasn't very good. We stuck a packet on the shelf. It was a higher price point, so we had a multi-pack. It was £2.50. The nearest competitor was a multi-pack. It was £2. Ours was flavoured, theirs wasn't. We thought that would be worth 50p more, but in the consumer's eyes, it wasn't. Our packaging was bold, but our SRP, so our shelf-ready packaging, wasn't designed in a way that kept the packaging upright. As soon as you took a packet, the rest of them just fell flat, so you didn't see them. Our SRP wasn't descriptive, so basically it was a white box, and it just had our logo on it. But what does Snaffling Pig mean? It didn't explain it to anybody. It didn't sell. And Sainsbury's very quickly were like, if you don't get your rate of sale up, then we have to find someone else. And that, that's fair enough. So we had to go back to the drawing board. We redesigned the packaging. We lowered our price point. We redesigned the SRP. And managed to get the rate of sale up and keep the listing. But since then, we've lost that particular SKU. It was a hard SKU to keep, but we've been lucky enough to get another SKU elsewhere in the store. So you're going to win some and you're going to lose some, and it's going to be really hurtful when you do lose some. But always try and remember why and learn from it, and don't be afraid to adapt. Your packaging doesn't have to stay the same all the time. Keep tweaking it and evolving it, and getting that experience from being listed and seeing a product on the shelf is so different to the product on your desk. And when you're in a sea of color, maybe just plain white is the best thing to do. It might look boring, but it stands out on shelf.
Brilliant. Like I said, that's all we've got time for, unfortunately. But Nick, thank you so much for the past. What are we, just over 45 minutes? It's been really, really interesting, and I think a lot of really, really useful advice in there. So yeah, thank you so much for your time. And with that, I will pass back to Chloe.
Thank you so much, Nick, for sharing your expertise and knowledge with us. We've had lots of lovely comments in the comment section from attendees. It was incredibly informative. Before we go, if you wanted the audience to come away with one clear takeaway, what would it be?
Don't win the listing too soon. Make sure your business is really geared up for it, and be highly critical of yourself, because once you get that listing, you're not going to keep it unless you work really, really hard for it.
Fantastic. Thank you, Nick. Our next Lightbulb session will be at the same time next week with Simon Scott Nelson and Ellie Callie. To mark Mental Health Awareness Week, we'll be discussing how to protect your mental health and the roadmap to resilience. If there is anything you'd like to catch up on from today's session, we'll be sending out a replay of this recording later on today. You can find the replay and future sessions at www.lightbulb-sessions.haysummit.com. Thank you very much for joining us today, and thank you again, Nick and Jonathan.
Thank you.
Goodbye, everybody.